I I had like 3 jokes lined up in my head, mostly at my expense, but our comments right before the show had me a little befuddled. Paul, question: we've done this podcast like 3, maybe 4 times, right? Just 3 or 4 times.
It's closer to infinity times, but yes.
And so we've had this display back here. You have one of these back, back here, right? I mean, we've used this a couple times, right?
But that's been in the background of the podcast since August 2016.
I don't think dates are important right now.
Okay.
And so up until this point, I have used a Microsoft Miracast dongle. And if you were watching the show or the pre-roll or whatever you want to call it before we started, the issue with this laptop is there is an update ready. I'm assuming maybe it's 1809. And so Miracast was not connecting to this TV. And so my annoyance was I couldn't reset this machine because if I hit reset, it says update and restart or just shut down and update. There's just no vanilla restart, which means I couldn't get Miracast to work. But Paul, if you'll notice, it's working. It's working.
Yeah. Well, that's because Miracast is a lie.
Well, there's that. But did you know that? And again, this is a new TV. There's a built-in streaming option for that TV, and you don't even need to use Miracast.
I did know that actually.
Thanks.
It shows up as like Samsung TV with like those angle brackets or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, so like Miracast was not showing up because, again, I needed to restart, which would fix it. So I just tapped it, and it worked like instantly. And
that's amazing. So this whole time you've been using this horrible Microsoft technology. And
okay. Yeah, so here we are.
Well, for whatever it's worth. I don't have one behind me right now, but for the year or so that I did, I used a Chromecast.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Am I any better? Yes. I mean, yes, obviously, yes. But
but it is Friday, January 4th. We are giving away some codes. Is that correct, Mr. Thrat?
Yeah, and just so in case anyone missed it, and hopefully you don't miss this part of it, the contest started at 1 p.m. ET, which is now about 2 minutes ago. There were several people, 20-ish, who had entered the contest before 1 p.m., so I have deleted those entries. And I will be disregarding any that come after 1 p.m. ET tomorrow, Saturday, January 5th. So we're going to leave this one open for 24 hours. I think we got roughly 500 entries on the first one. And this one is the same in that we're going to have 5 product codes for Xbox Game Pass and 5 for Office 365 Home. And then at some point in the future, I would imagine next week, whenever the hardware arrives, we'll do a giveaway off the site for, 5 Surface Go's with type covers and 5 pairs of Surface headphones.
Fantastic. I mean, that's wholesome, right? It's
good stuff.
Yeah. And, good. You need to do this every January. I'll just throw that on you. Good luck.
Yeah. Every time I do this, it's like anything else horrible. Like, when you go to CES and you get back, you're like, I'm never doing this again. And then it takes like 9 or 10 months before you're like, maybe, and this kind of thing is like that. And the web stuff isn't too horrible. Actually,
right.
I went through a kind of a lengthy process to determine like what would be the best way to pick. I picked the winners randomly using the numbers, but then having to find them in the post. Like, is there an easy way to do that? Some computer science way, and actually it's not that hard. The
computer science,
the physical stuff is a little different because I actually have to package those up individually and then ship them to people, and it's kind of a pain, but whatever. I'm happy to do it once a year.
Yeah. So I have some breaking news, and by absolutely breaking, I mean this is going to be of no consequences to anybody except maybe other than Paul.
Okay.
I have found a new writing app. No surprise here. Yeah, and this one...
Is it called Microsoft Word? Because seriously, what the hell?
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll end up there, but I did pay for this one.
Okay. Oh, jeez, already?
Yeah, already. Right. Well, the problem is you have to pay for it to be even, try it. But there's 2 thoughts there. If a company's making you pay for something before you can even try it, they're really confident that they have a good product, or they're just going to take my money and run. So, fortunately, this one worked out pretty well. I was using Simple Note to write everything. But the problem, as you pointed out, is that it's like Word, that when you copy text out of it and paste it into WordPress, it carries some of that underlying baggage, we'll call it. And I was getting
By the
around
way,
this.
Also a problem with Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
Curiously, like you think that would be the cleanest output imaginable. It's not.
Yeah. And so I was getting around that by just pasting it in as text. Just click the little text field, paste it in, bada bing, bada boom. And somebody recommended this app to me, and I cannot remember who, so I apologize. It's called Write ! And it's not cheap. It is $25. It is.
I think I paid for this. I think I also own this.
Yeah, you can go to Write. I have no affiliation with this app
because it's a desktop app. It's not a store app.
It does not work on the phone, which is the one downside. But it solves the many problems that I have. One, it's very minimalistic. Two, it supports Markdown, which means I can just copy and paste it directly into the CMS, and it looks exactly like it did on the desktop. The most important thing, though, for me is that you can use any sort of service that you want for the cloud. And so what I did was I just put my documents folder in OneDrive in this app, and it has a very nice interface. So now on the left side, I just have a running list of all the posts I've written. Okay. And on the right side, I have all my text. And this will hold me over for probably a week.
Yeah, I'll look at it again. I must have paid for it because you're saying you can't use it without paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely paid for it then. So there would have been some reason why I didn't like it and stop using it. I'll look. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I do remember because it's right !
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I own this.
Yeah. The one thing too for me is I'm very particular about the UI, mostly because I want no crap. Like I don't want any Chrome. I just want a text box. And in this one, conveniently, I can have a list of the running drafts, which is helpful for when we have like multiple posts going out or if there's embargoed stuff or whatever. And it supports tabs, but you can hide all that crap. And it's just very minimal, clean. It's very quick, and I can sync it over my own OneDrive, which is the problem with Simple Note, aside from the copy-paste, is that if I decide to leave this app, all my content is still synced OneDrive, and I don't have to worry about it. They're just text files.
Yep. Yeah, so I started using Microsoft Word again recently, maybe over the holidays, because I'm always trying to see what the kids are doing these days. Yeah. And it's not available on the desktop yet, but they're going to be going to a simplified ribbon, which I think will meet my minimalistic requirements, just based on what it looks like in the web version of Word. But of course, you can hide the ribbon, and when you do that, you get like what looks like sort of a mini toolbar of just the ribbon tab titles.
Yep.
And honestly, it's about as minimalistic as it gets. I do have problems with Word for sure. There's a lot of settings that I have to configure anyway.
Yeah.
And I have to do them every time I install Word on any computer because despite the fact that Word Office, like Windows 10, has settings sync, it syncs some of them,
Yep.
And there's a bunch of things related to auto replace and the way I save things, like you're saying you want to save to OneDrive, which obviously you can do to any cloud service, but you can do that from Word, at least some of the big ones. I find that to be a little ponderous. It's one of the things, when you think about minimalism or trying to keep it as simple as possible, part of that to me means I configure something once and then it's always like that on any computer.
Yep.
And, Markdown Pad does not rise to that challenge for sure. Word doesn't, so I'm trying.
Yeah. John, who purchased a copy of Beneath the Surface, which thank you, John, actually asked, he said, why did you stop using AppyText? AppyText is a great app. I think it's $5 in the Microsoft Store. It's a very basic text editor. The way I would describe it is Write App is what I would love AppyText to become. AppyText is just very basic, which is what I want. But Write App has a lot more features behind the scenes, if you will. It's just more customizable than AppyText. There's nothing wrong with AppyText. If they add all this stuff, I'll probably more than likely go back. But
there's an app I mentioned earlier called Typora, which is currently free, although it's technically in a beta and they could charge for it at some point. It's excellent. And I love the look of it. I love the quality of the text rendering. It's wonderful. But when you write in that, you paste it into WordPress, it spews a bunch of formatting garbage on every single paragraph. And it doesn't matter how much I like the app. I can't use that. So I suspect Write will, based on my very minimal memory of it, it's going to be similar to Typora from a user experience perspective, and the fact that it doesn't do the the formatting spewing is good.
Other things that are happening this week. This one is near and dear to our heart, Paul. Microsoft isn't killing Cortana, but they are putting a gag in her mouth, and it is it is
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, so this one's personal for me. You know about my issues with accessibility in Windows 10 and the fact that I have a deaf child, and I feel that Microsoft is not necessarily representing the handicapped community here. But whatever. The big issue, aside from my personal issues with this, which I've raised with them repeatedly, and they have their responses are just absolutely clueless, is they're only doing this for the business versions of Windows 10 because this is pissed off IT. Because if as scary as it is when Cortana starts scatting and screaming when setup launches, when you're doing it as a person, imagine you have a room full of computers and they all come on at slightly different times and she's screaming all over the room. It's a disaster. So they're responding to that complaint, not to my complaint, which means that if you have Windows 10 Pro or Enterprise, and I think Education, this will no longer be on by default. It shouldn't be on by default for anybody, but it will be on by default if you have Windows 10 Home. So congratulations, home users. You are still Microsoft's bitch. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I just like to imagine that there was somebody on the right team at the right time at the right place inside of the Microsoft office, or Microsoft like literal offices like in Redmond, installing Windows, and heard Cortana and just said, "That's it," and just walked over to the team and said, "Turn that off or mute it."
Let me make a guess about how this came about, because I think this will be very accurate.
They installed Windows.
They've really
once?
ground their heels in the Windows team about this accessibility stuff, because accessibility trumps everything. Like this notion that a feature that will benefit perhaps 3 human beings this entire year, but outrages all of the rest of them, is lost on these people, because there is no downside to accessibility. You always do accessibility. I think it's a little more nuanced than that. I think in a situation where you're literally blind or can see so poorly that you can't set up Windows 10, you're going to have people who can do stuff like that for you. Like this is a non-need from, like 99.99 something percent of people.
Yeah.
There's that. But I just,
it's a sensitive area. I get it.
it's a hard one for me. And but they don't listen to that. What I just said, and it doesn't matter how logical it is, it's like when you call on a phone system and you have to sit through someone saying something in Spanish before you can get to the phone call. Now, at some point, it's possible that over 50% of the people in the United States will speak Spanish. And maybe at that point, doing that would make some sense. But until then, maybe that could be second or third. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm just asking for some common sense. I'm not saying don't accommodate these people. I've pointed out that Apple does it correctly in Mac OS X. They've done this for years. If you enter setup and it sits there for 30 or 60 seconds, I don't remember which, then the voice command software will kick in and ask you if you want to do it that way. That's the right approach.
I agree.
So anyway, this is the thing I've raised, again and again. Now, on the good news front, there is another change that I should probably go back and check on this, but I don't believe they explicitly called out this would impact Windows 10 Home, but it is in fact humongous on Windows 10 Home. So for example, if you go to Windows Update today, let me just do that so I can see what it says. There are 3 main options in the current version of Windows 10. You can change the active hours, you can view update history, or you could go to advanced options. If you're on Windows 10 Pro or better, advanced options has ways to defer and pause updates. So at some build, I don't remember which build, but of the next version of Windows 10, they added a feature, which was basically an easier way to pause updates for up to 7 days. And what that means is there's a 4th option in Windows Update that says pause updates for 7 days. It's right there. So if you don't want any updates to come for a week, you can click this button. It just works. If you go into advanced options, you can change. I assume you'll be able to change it to whatever the previous schedule was. Like on Pro, it was probably, I think you could change feature updates for a year and quality updates probably for a year. I don't remember the exact time frames, but there were long time frames. But this is in Windows 10 Home.
Yeah.
So that means for the first time ever, Windows 10 Home users will in fact be able to pause updates for up to a week. You could actually choose 1 to 7 days. That's actually pretty big. Now,
yeah, it is.
I would argue maybe a month or 2 might be a more acceptable time frame, honestly, because the thing you want to update usually is like a feature update because it's so disruptive. But you know what? It's sort of like the Cortana thing. They've kind of thrown us a bone. I'll complain about it because it's not complete. But the truth is, this is literally better than it's ever been. Like literally better. So I'll chalk that up as a minor victory for the complainers.
Yeah.
By which I mean me and anyone else who's complained about this.
Yeah, this actually, and since he no longer work there, I think this is fair game. It was about a year ago, I would say, we had breakfast with Terry Myerson. Is that about right? Yeah, was it CES?
Yeah, right. Yep.
And one of the things he said at that breakfast was that he said Windows updates are still too cumbersome. He said the dream world is that you never know that it was updated. He's like, we're far away from that, but he goes, that's where we're marching towards. And every time I get stuck in this position where it's like, okay, I can't restart my machine without updating, I think about that conversation where he said, we want to get it so you don't even know your machine's been updated. It just happens in the background.
Well, look, we all own mobile devices. If you have an iPhone, you know that when there's a system update, you'll be prompted. There'll be a little bang on the general part of settings, whatever they call it. Android has its own system for this. Nobody sees it because nobody ever updates Andy. No, but seriously, if you have like OnePlus or a Pixel phone, whatever, a lot of phones get updates. Samsung phones get updates. There is some notification, and your phone reboots, right?
Yep.
And we all do this. You know, app updates occur seamlessly. I think that's consistent across platforms. I don't really. The difference between a phone and a PC is that there's a sense of state on a mobile device that you kind of don't have on PC, although it's starting to get there.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
This notion that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 apps running right now. If I walked away from this computer, ate lunch, and my computer rebooted, updated the software, and came back, and those things all came back to where they were with the same apps running, which isn't exactly what happens on mobile, that would be a much more sophisticated system and would be less onerous for the user for sure. And that's a dream, but it kind of doesn't happen on mobile either. It's just that the system is so different. There's a very kind of aggressive, what Microsoft used to call tombstoning of apps, where they kind of go to sleep, they go into the background, and then they literally turn off, but they maintain their state. So I think, that should be part of this as well. It's part of the nightmare of Windows 10 because most of it is desktop legacy stuff that doesn't have this notion of state.
Yep. The frustrating or annoying part, or whatever you want to call it, is that after this podcast, I will shut this lid, and I will I'll probably not open it back up until Monday when we do another podcast, and it won't update by itself until I tell it to do that, even though it'll sit here all weekend and not. But whatever. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's still better than the problem you would have had with that device 2 years ago. Where you'd close that lid, come back, and it would be like roaring hot in the battery.
Battery would be dead.
Yeah,
and I'd have to update.
And then you'd be forced to update when you rebooted.
You plug it in, you're like, all right, we can use this thing now. And it says your files are right where we left them. You're like, oh,
it's so hot you can't even touch it.
Yeah, at least you could cook eggs on it. I guess that was a underutilized feature.
It's important that we always have something to complain about.
It is. I mean, what would we do if we? I guess we could. Just
what would we do?
It.
Be happy?
Yeah.
What would that be like? It's like, what's wrong with you? You got this kind of goofy smile on your face. Are you content or something?
You have an unusual glow, and it doesn't look like it's radioactive.
Oh well.
And leading into the big news in next week, because Dell couldn't keep it under wraps any longer. The CES announcements are starting to arrive with Dell. Hedy wrote up, Dell launches a new Latitude 2-in-1 with express sign-in and upgraded internals. And if that makes you happy, boy, do we have a good post for you.
Kudos to Mehdi, by the way. This, but he proactively reached out to every PC maker, hardware maker he could think of to get their information ahead of time. You and I aren't going, but the CES, that is. But that wouldn't have necessarily helps with getting information early. I have a handful of companies that kind of legitimate companies like Dell and HP and Lenovo and others who do reach out to me, and I forward those things to Mehdi now.
And I would like to point out all the non-legitimate ones, like that app for the Apple Watch that was involved. There's a love-making Apple Watch app that Paul forwarded to me. Anyways, go on.
You might be interested. I don't know why this is a negative. I saw that and I thought of you. I should never say that. So, moving on. What were we talking
I
about?
don't
Yeah.
even-
So no, I mean, Behetti's done an amazing job, and so he's got this crazy number of posts queued up
Yeah.
for whenever the NDAs are, and Fidel, like you said, for some reason is going out the weekend or the week before CES or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of news, I think, is the short version of this story, and also Behetti's done a great job on it.
It's CES. Somebody asked in the chat room, and it's already scrolled by. They asked, "What are you looking forward to at CES, Paul? What's on your top of your agenda?"
Right. I honestly not much. I mean, I'm the types of things I'm looking forward to this coming year aren't going to happen at CES, right? So there'll probably be some smart home devices like Lenovo and other companies have these smart displays like the one I have out in my kitchen.
Yep.
I have Google Assistant based devices all around my house. I have some interest along those lines, I guess. But so we'll see, because actually I don't really know much about any of that stuff happening. But as far as new PCs and so forth, it's going to be iterative, right? So I think HP already announced, for example, the burgundy leather version of their HP Spectre Folio is available. You're shipping soon. It's 4K display if you want it. So again, it's just the same device, different color, different screen. There'll be new computers from Dell, like we saw today, and HP and Lenovo and everyone else. I'm not expecting anything dramatic there. Apple has no presence at this show.
Right.
Google has actually a minor presence, by the way, at the show, and they're going to be there again, but they don't ever release or announce new hardware there, right? So I wouldn't mind more Google speakers or more other Google hardware, and that's not going to happen at this show. Samsung's big product announcement is coming around Mobile World Congress, or roughly that time frame, end of February, for what will probably be the Galaxy S10 rather. So, like a lot of the stuff I kind of care about. There's no new version of Windows 10. There's no, it's just, the CES is a little bit less of a focus for me personally. But aside from that lovemaking tool that I thought you and your wife might be interested in, wow.
Thought we avoided that one, but here we are again, circling right back to where we.
Well, it's smartphone connected.
It wasn't even smart. Well, I guess it was. I guess it's
Apple Watch connected.
Yeah, that was. I think that's.
What does it do? Like give you a little notification, like you might want to slow down there, cowboy. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine, because I didn't read any of it. I just saw the thing and I was like, oh my god. It had to say your name. Right?
I always think we can't get any worse on this show, and yet here we are. Here we are. The things I'm looking forward to. So last year we had LCD displays in refrigerators. I'm assuming we're going to see them in washers and dryers and gas cooktops and everything else. And I'm not looking forward to that. I think it's ridiculous that you can buy those things now. But if you've ever said, hey, I wish my gas cooktop had an LCD display, I'm sure that'll be solved soon.
Yeah. I don't think we wrote about this, but I think it was GE announced some new smart lights that might be Google Assistant only, which is a stupid decision, but whatever. Competition in that kind of arena is always good. Philips Hue lights are whatever they are, but they're expensive. And
exactly.
I'd like to put smart lights in more places in my house. In fact, my wife just asked me what we're going to do with the lights that are out in the garage. And I was like, well, unless you feel like sticking your hand up into the socket, I'm going to say nothing for the short term. But we did spend like $80 on these things. And it's like, is there a place in the house where these could be used more often or whatever, or enjoyed by us? Because frankly, when there's light on the outside of the house, I only get to see it when I drive in. Yeah.
But at least when your neighbors are walking by, you could change the color to impress them with your remote.
See, what would be impressive is if there was some kind of a light show that was associated with it.
Well, you could do the scenes, but I mean, it's not going to start playing Trans-Siberian Orchestra and reacting.
Right, exactly. Like the lights go up and down like in a concert or something.
So Paul, I had a good parenting moment last night that I think you'll appreciate. So my kid has been, ever since she played checkers with what is her great grandmother, what is my grandmother, my kid's been obsessed with checkers. She's terrible at it, but she likes the idea of playing checkers. And so my wife got a checkerboard set, and we played checkers last night. And I was doing the nice dad thing and just letting her kind of do whatever. And she set up a double jump, and I didn't take it. And I tried to point it out to her, and she didn't quite get it. And then she set up a triple jump. And so I couldn't hold it back anymore. So I triple jumped her, and Like when I got done, she was confused as like what just happened, and then she told me take all the pieces off and just.
Did she cry?
She looked at me like I had just betrayed her at the highest level of regard, and like 30 seconds later, she like tears just started coming down her face, and she just started crying, and it was great. You know, that's.
So that look of betrayal is something I get almost every day from my own daughter, who's a teenager. There are no tears anymore because she's older, right? So things improve slightly. But I shared with you that my daughter had to go back to school this week for 2 days and came home sick on the first day, and I was like, "What did you succumb to, Kelly? Schoolitis?" Which she did not appreciate. And then the second day she came back from school. I guess 3 days. So she came back Thursday, and I said, "How was school?" She said, "Good." And I said, "What was good about it?" And then she's like, "Dad," and she just shook her head and walked away.
Sorry for trying to have a relationship.
Name one thing that was good at school today. Just name one.
Did you have a lunch that was somewhat
was
delicious?
A tasty lunch maybe? Or when you went home from school, was that the best part?
Maybe you got a good grade. You never know. You never know. Oh, kids. You can't really have a nice home. Yeah.
I've said it before.
Yeah, because we were talking about this yesterday, because we're meeting with an architect next week to see if we can afford what we want to do. But I was like, man, you know what would be great is if we replaced all the floorboards my daughter destroyed as a kid with new ones. And my wife's like, you think she's just done? Like, you think that's over?
Right.
I was like,
you can do that. This might not be the best year.
Yeah. Yeah, she had a...
Also, I don't know, is your dog doing anything to your floors?
Fortunately not. And it's not so much like the actual... floorboards, my baseboard is the word I was looking for. It's basically anything you can take a little shopping cart and just ram it into. Yeah.
Our dog is as big as I am, so we have like a bay window in the front, and there's a flat, like a shelf or whatever, and it's covered in dog scratches because she gets up there on 2 legs and looks out the window. And that's something we're going to have to fix before we move. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
So excited.
Animals are great. Great.
I love spending money on pointless things. It's like when you hurt yourself working out and you didn't even know that muscle existed. You're like, what's this thing I have to replace? It's like a shelf under the window. Like I've never even looked at that. But now it's covered in dog scratches, and I can never again not see it.
Thanks to everybody trying to lose weight for the New Year's resolution, which is not going to work out. I'm sorry to tell you. I now have to go to the gym. I went to the gym this morning at 7 a.m. Usually I go at about 7 p.m. But I did that.
Oh, because it was so crowded.
Yeah, I go roughly every other day. And,
it's amazing.
And
it's amazing that people do this.
Yeah.
They're like the people that show up on church at like Easter and Christmas. It's like, just give it up. You're not fooling anybody.
Right.
Like, jeez, this is not enough to save your body and or soul.
Right.
It's
a commitment, not a deadline. That's not how this works. So anyways, that's I went this morning and it was actually completely empty. So it was nice. It was nice.
I work down in the cellar. It's also completely empty, unless the sewer is gushing up out of the bottom of it. Some scene from the Amityville Horror, but yeah.
Got to do something. Speaking of something, Paul, you got anything else for today?
No, just to remind people that we are having this contest. It goes through tomorrow, Saturday, June.
June.
January. Gee, I wish it was June. January 5th at 1 p.m. ET. Just add the text Office 365 and or Xbox Game Pass to a comment. Only enter once, please. Only enter during that time frame from 1 p.m. today to 1 p.m. tomorrow. And I will pick the winners and notify them and post it on the site tomorrow, Saturday afternoon. And obviously email them the codes too. It's not just, you win nothing. Thanks for playing.
Yep. Well,
speaking of which, I believe I have not heard from 2 people from the first giveaway.
Wow.
And it's one of each. So it's like one Office 365 code and one Xbox Game Pass code. So I'm going to check on that. I think that's the case. And I'll reach out to those guys again, but maybe I'll have to pick alternate winners.
Yeah, I mean,
And then they'll disappointedly write me a month from now and be like, hey, what happened to my code?
well, the shot clock expired.
Yeah. Yeah, just don't add me to your spam filter.
Hmm.
Unless you don't want to win.
Yep. I think we're good.
All right.
Well, that wraps
Good.
it up for today, everybody.
Good
Make
start.
sure to leave a comment if you want to enter that stuff. Make sure to read all the rules and all that good stuff, and we will contact you, and hopefully you'll respond, and then you'll win that prize. That wraps it up for today. We will catch you back tomorrow, Monday. Monday. It is Friday today. We should be back to a regular schedule next week. We got CES going on and a bunch of other stuff. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and thanks for tuning in.